Welcome to our July 1st, 2008 meeting. May we have the roll call, please?
Agency members Draymond.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Yusefian.
Here.
Chairman Najarian.
Here. May we have your report?
The agenda for the July 1, 2008 regular meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, June 26, 2008 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. The next item?
Next item is approval of minutes.
So moved.
And
Is there a motion to second that?
Yes, a second.
if there are no objections or corrections, the minutes will be approved as submitted. Next item, please.
Chair, item 5 is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the redevelopment agency may question or respond to a speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff through the executive director for an investigation and report.
I have one card from Herbert Milano.
Not here.
Mr. Milano is not here. I have another card from Mr. Astorian.
Who's on?
Chairman Najarian, members of agency members, my name is Greg Astorian. Harking back to the meeting we just had about the green building and LEED certification, I was reading an article provided to me by Urban Land Institute. I wanted to quote a couple of things to you and basically look at some of the implications of high energy costs and how downtown specific plan was or is designed as such that is going to help us reduce those energy costs. And because of the proximity of the businesses and along with the residences. PFC Energy is a Washington-based energy consulting company. They think that our oil production would peak between 2010 to 2015 and then start falling, never to rise again. Washington Post reports for every 10 barrels of conventional oil that is being consumed, only 4 barrels are being discovered. Congressman Roscoe Bartlett from Maryland, my adopted hometown, has written that U.S. has 2% of the known world oil reserves, yet we use about 25%, consume about 25% of the reserves. Peter Navarro, UC Irvine, says the best case scenario with higher oil prices is slow growth and the worst case is recession, and we are teetering right on the edge. Undoubtedly, gentlemen, the age of cheap energy is ending. What impact will this have for land use, especially in city of Glendale? And I'm happy to report back that by adopting the downtown specific plan, you have pretty much helped alleviate that problem to a certain degree in city of Glendale. According to ULI, there are 3 possible implications to the high energy costs. One of them is the green green energy efficient buildings, which is what you just adopted in the past meeting. Total in the nation, there's 157 major buildings that are LEED certified, and I'm talking about buildings that are over 50,000 square feet. And 3 of those that are going to be built are going to be in the city of Glendale. It's going to be added up to that 157. About 40% of the world energy and energy is being produced and used, and the CO2 that is being produced used and produced by the buildings, large-scale buildings. Downtown specific plan, by having incentivized the green or the LEED certification, is one step ahead of this issue. The second implication was going to be for the future planning to carefully consider the driving habits, and basically downtown specific plan again does that. We know that families with children now represent less than about a quarter of the population. The Archie Bunker suburbs are changing. The need of living into or close to destinations are more prevalent. Smart growth patterns, regardless of what you call them, whether it's a urban village or traditional neighborhood developments, or in our case, our downtown specific plan, or designed to create mixed-use communities with access to green space as well as transportation. The third implication, again, according to ULI, is the transit-oriented developments that is going to be, we are going to be seeing. All in all, gentlemen, in conclusion, I just wanted to say that by this city having adopted the downtown-specific plan, it has put us a light years ahead of issues that are going to rise because of the energy, rise in the energy prices. With that, I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Astorian. Mr. Milano has not returned. I do not have any other cards for oral communications, and I'm going to close this item. Let's move on to the next topic.
On the business agenda at 6A is Director of Development Services regarding Glendale Career College's new request to discuss a parking exception for the proposed relocation of their college at 240 North Brand Boulevard. At 6A1 is a motion directing staff.
Thank you. Mr. Lanzafame?
Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, you do have a new request from Glendale Career College. We have drafted in the report some of the background that you saw on the prior request, the reasons why you made the decisions that you did, and then some of the new circumstances. Annette Vartanian Jackson is here to give you a very brief report on this request. Annette?
Good afternoon, Chairman Najarian and members of the agency. Glendale Career College has requested staff to present to the agency its request for a 135-space parking exception at 240 North Brand. As you may remember, in February 2007, the agency granted a parking exception to Glendale Career College at that location. However, 1 year later, it revoked the parking exception because the college stated that it would be going out of business and it would not occupy the space. The parking exception was initially granted primarily because of the strict conditions imposed by the agency. These included a 3-year term limit on the lease and the parking exception, that the college would move to a property that was being developed in the San Fernando Road corridor, and this performance would be secured by a $1 million bond and a covenant. The owners of Northwest College have acquired Glendale Career College and are seeking to lease a portion of the basement at the same location. The basement space usually attracts a very limited number of users, so this use would fill up that vacant space and it would bring additional visitors to the downtown area. But unlike the previous application, this college would be permanently located in the space, and there's currently 3 vacant spaces in the downtown area that are being marketed as restaurant use. Currently, staff is working on the implementation of a parking in lieu fees policy, which gives developers the option to pay fees for each code-required parking space which is not provided on site. A rate is being developed as part of the mobility plan implementation, which will be presented to you in late July. Should the agency wish to consider the college's request for a parking exception, it is recommended an updated parking demand study be conducted as part of the proposal and an environmental review. The Traffic and Transportation Division also recommends the current parking exception request be analyzed in an identical manner with the same conditions as applied to the prior parking exception application. Staff is seeking agency direction regarding this parking exception request and the imposition of parking in lieu fee. Staff is available to answer any questions that you may have. The applicant is also here to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. I have several cards from the public. Would anyone like to make comments before I take those?
Questions?
Yes, Mr. Weaver.
Yeah, I am confused. It's going to be Northwest College doing business as Glendale Career College?
That's a way to look at it.
It's still one college. Glendale Career
Correct.
College does not exist anymore, I thought.
You can ask the owner. I believe they purchased the school and the names.
Okay, so they're doing business as
One entity.
yes. And I thought that, from what I'd heard previously from them, they needed fewer parking spaces than Glendale Career College did before. Now I'm hearing it's more.
It's
it's counterintuitive, but because of the space that Glendale Career College was originally going to use was retail, and they were going to use it as office, not classroom, they were getting more of a credit than the current applicant. I asked the same question and we checked, because of the credit that was on the former proposal. But this is all in the basement, which was not considered retail, so there was less of a credit.
So, because a change of use requires more parking spaces,
Yes.
classroom rather than,
Well, this was office to classroom. Office is 2.7 per thousand, classroom is 28.6 per thousand.
okay. And I heard the other thing, they want it permanently?
This would be a permanent a lease, and they're asking for a permanent parking exception. That's why we'd indicated the last one was a 3-year term because they were going to relocate onto San Fernando Road. The use being considered here does not have that out,
But
if you will.
Dornplatz owns the land, and they would run the lease with Glendale Career College. So it wouldn't necessarily be permanent. It'd be a lease over a time period. Because what if
It would be,
Dornplatz,
yes, it would be a lease, but I think it's a 10-year lease.
because if Dornplatz decides to develop the whole site in 4 or 5 years, it can't possibly have a permanent situation. There's got to be some latitude to adapt.
Mr. Starver?
Well, the point is, if you grant an exception, it will run with the use. So as long as they're there, they'd have the exception. That's what we view as permanent. The previous arrangement had the college moving out within 3 years.
I understood that one, but as long as Dornplatz will allow them to be there and constructed a lease for them to be there, that's outside of our control.
Right, but the parking exception would be available to them as long as they're on the
Okay.
site.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no other questions at this point, I'll go to the public. I have Nancy Kent.
Nancy Kent, resident of Glendale. I would like to encourage the redevelopment agency to do everything that you feel is appropriate to enable this career college to move into the basement at this building. To me, it seems like it will be good for Brand Boulevard to have additional people in the area of California and Brand. And I do not live in this area, but I do go to 24-Hour Fitness, so I will be in competition with these people for parking spaces and sometimes perhaps in competition with them for the bicycle rack that's in the building at 240 North Brand. And it's one of the few buildings, I believe, that has an indoor bike rack in Glendale. I don't know if there's space in the basement to have indoor parking for bicycles or bicycle lockers or anything like that. I'd like to encourage that, but I do think that it will be good for the business district to have these additional people in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mitchell First.
Good afternoon, Chairman Najarian, members of the agency, Mr. Lanzafame, city staff. It's my pleasure today to give you a brief overview of our proposal for 240 North Brand. I am currently a part owner of Northwest College, who recently acquired Glendale Career College actually just a few months ago. Northwest College has been in business a long time, since 1966, 42 years. It was actually founded by a pretty important lady to me. She happens to be my mother. She's here in the audience today, joining us. We're a small company. We have 7 locations, many in Southern California, 1 in Las Vegas. We basically came in at the 11th hour and saved Glendale Career College for many reasons, but because it's a valuable resource to the residents of the city of Glendale. This is a totally different proposal, in our opinion, than its last life. Going in the lower level in the basement with no retail frontage, with a much smaller footprint, we think is a very realistic proposal. The staff report says 135 spaces based on the code, but it's my understanding that the what the code calculates and what the actual use are two different things. I articulated in city staff said no more than 68 students at one time. The members of the agency have to realize that we have two different class sections. We run in the morning and in the evening, so the parking requirement is much less than actually the code is in this case. Also, the staff report didn't account for many students who can take mass transit, and since this is a green day, this is a very important thing, as many of our students do take mass transit. The conditions, the college is willing to limit our enrollment, pay $45 per space per month, which is great for Glendale, considering that garage is only half full and has for since I think it was built. This getting lost with another parking study and all this more dialogue. We've already spent so much time, talking about this over in its last life. We feel it'd be tragic for the students that we serve as our lease is rapidly coming to a close. These are crucial programs. If any of you, the members of the agency, city staff, are baby boomers, you all got to know that the students that we train in surgical technology and as nurses will be the people, your caretakers, as you seek more medical attention as our baby booming population ages. You'll be glad that we train these people. Our students, some of who you'll meet in a minute, are consumers and bring economic benefit to downtown. They will eat at Porto's, use FedEx Kinko's, eat at many restaurants, shop at the beauty supply, etc., etc., etc. We are respectfully asking today that this be brought to a vote, and we appreciate your support of our mutually beneficial proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, Mr. Chair, if any of us are in a life-threatening emergency, and we happen to have voted no, we should inquire of the paramedics whether they got their degree at Glendale Career College before they pick up the stretcher.
Or Northwest.
Or Northwest, yes, for that matter. Okay.
Next speaker is Marcia McCulley, followed by Tom Bugansky.
Good afternoon, members of the council. My name is Marcia McCulley, and I represent the Surgical Technology program at Glendale Career College as a student. I've been at the college for over a year now, and look forward to graduating in October as a surgical technologist. For me, it's actually a second career move. I started out in Glendale about 20 years ago as a nurse, and I've had my 3 children here. I don't currently live in Glendale. I live in Westlake Village, which is a good 40 miles from here. I commute here every day, well, Monday through Thursday approximately, to go to school here, and I'm a very vital member of your community here. And I just want you to know that having a parking structure for the school is very important. Oftentimes I get caught in traffic. I know that I'm not the only student that commutes a great distance, but when we get here, we need to park and we need to get to class right away. Our classes are about 5 hours in length, and at some point we need to take a break, we need to eat, we need to get out, we only get a 20-minute break for lunch or dinner, and being able to cross the street and go to your many restaurants as a wide selection is very, very vital to our existence here in Glendale. And so I would request from the council that you consider letting us have the parking structure available. It would mean a lot to us. We are a very real population for you. And we are also a vital member of your healthcare community. In the past, as a nurse, I can tell you that surgical technology is a profession in and of itself that's not likely to go away anytime soon. As many of you know, that nursing in and of itself has its own shortages, and nursing and healthcare rely on surgical technology to a great extent to help facilitate the healthcare process and caring for your surgical and medical needs. So, again, thank you for your consideration, and we would appreciate it immensely.
Thank you. Tom Bugansky, followed by Maritza Martinez.
Hello, everyone. I was just thinking about it, and I'm over at Glendale Adventist right now, and surgeries can last from 30 minutes to 6 hours, where you're right there in the OR. And if we, during class time, it's mock surgery, it's like the real deal. If we have to run out every 2 hours during that surgery to go put money in the parking meter, that wouldn't really help our education much. But with the parking structure, that would help us focus on our studies, on our skills, and also do our shopping, do our eating, take our breaks, and put less stress on our education. That's all I have.
Thank you. Maritza Martinez.
Good afternoon, Councilman. I am very grateful for the opportunity.
Your name for the record, please.
My name is Maritza Martinez, and I'm here representing Glendale Career College. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity of this college that has given me a second opportunity. When I came to this country 5 years ago, I was married, had my children, and then found myself, like many people, through a divorce and having to find a new way to support my family. And this college provided that opportunity for me, and it's been very supportive and been working not only with me but all of the students' needs. And I believe that it's a great opportunity for everybody in the community, because there's a lot of people that don't know what a surgical technologist is. You know, they see us and then that's when they go, well, what exactly is it that you're studying? So I think it would be also in benefit for Glendale City, because they'll be seeing us out there, they'll be asking questions, and people that may not have their career yet set, or they can view this as, you know what, maybe this is something I want to do. And by providing us with a parking structure, it's very convenient, like some of my colleagues have mentioned, the reasons why everybody travels from really far to come to college, to the school, and learn. And we like to do it in a real-time experience. Like he mentioned, like we can't be, oh, I gotta go change my parking before I get a $30 ticket, or, you know, that's just not professional. So I would like to ask the council to please support our school, and I hope that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. The last card I have is from Herbert Milano.
Good afternoon. My name is Herbert Milano, members of the Redevelopment Agency. The building in question, 240 North Brand, in that basement is a building that I happen to know fairly well because I exercise upstairs on a regular basis. And I happen to have an apartment building about 3 blocks away from that. And one of the things that I've noticed for many years now is that we've reached saturation with regard to the availability of on-street parking going back at least 3 years. Fortunately, we have some restricted parking for residents, you know, along the streets that go north-south. But on the connector streets like California, it's really very difficult to find parking and adequate parking during certain times of the day. And it's incredibly difficult to find parking especially in the early evenings. And now I don't know the full schedule for this particular college. And I am one that always proposes and supports, you know, additional education and educational venues, particularly, you know, private colleges that are out there to meet a segment of the population that is unmet. And so I have an affinity and an appreciation for what the objectives of this college will do. But I think that having adequate parking and availability of on-street parking, specifically for this area between Brand Boulevard and Glendale Avenue, requires that the city provides us with a measurement with regard to the saturation or the availability of parking spaces during different times of the day. I've requested that type of information in the past several times, that a study be made of these areas that have been with insufficient on-street parking, because many of the buildings in the area were built prior to the 1980s, where there were fewer requirements with regard to subterranean parking or adequate parking, which means that guest parking is generally not being provided or available during many times of the day. My concern primarily is after 5 p.m., where there are days when there absolutely is no parking left. And I'm not opposed to a college being there. I'm just making sure that the city makes an appropriate study to say, look, at 8 o'clock p.m., there are 0 open parking available on all the streets in this particular area. You need proper evaluations of the saturation that we currently have. And these are the problems that are typical in many areas of Glendale. Very similar to the problems that you find near Glendale High School, where we don't have an accurate measure of the availability of on-street parking during certain times of the day, simply because of the way that either the variances were given or the way the buildings were constructed decades ago. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any other cards. Mr. Quintero.
Okay, I am a supporter of this proposal, as I was a supporter of the previous proposal. This is even better in a sense. Number one, as I've mentioned in the past, obviously what this school is training for is going to be a direct benefit for our residents here in Glendale, many of whom I know for a fact are enrolled in both schools, Northwest and Glendale Career College, and it's absolutely going to be good for the area hospitals. Remember, we have 3. And there's always shortages, a lot of turnover, etc. This particular college, Northwest, I'm familiar with it. It's a very well-run organization. It's been around for years. Northwest has been located here in Brand for many years. Not too many people know that, but in fact it's already operating here in the city, and we haven't had any issues at all. The schedule works out well. It's Monday through Thursday, morning classes, and my experience has been that that's usually the more heavily attended classes. Then we have the evening schedule. But at any rate, it's Monday through Thursday. When you look at the studies of the Orange Street Garage, I mean, I'm surprised that we have that many vehicles, to tell you the truth. My experience has been that it's always next to empty. So what we're doing here is basically charging a fee for the parking, so the city is actually going to benefit directly, or the parking fund is going to benefit directly. Also, in this proposal, the retail stays, which means that there's not going to be any impact at all in terms of usage on that particular corner. So I think this is a very good idea. I don't think that we need a long-term parking demand study or anything else. In terms of what Mr. Weaver was asking, I mean, basically the lease is between the property owner, Dorn Platts, and the business. So, that arrangement is what it is. But I'm very happy to vote for this, and I think it'll be more students that, as one of the speakers mentioned, will be out eating and shopping and buying and so forth. So, and I think also my experience has been that there's an awful lot of MTA usage. There will be lots of students that are going to be taking the bus right there on Brand, getting on and off. So all in all, I think it's a good idea, and I'm very happy that Northwest stepped into the shoes of Glendale Career College and bought it, because I think, as I mentioned, they're a very organized company that's always done a great job. Medical training is their niche. That's what they've always done. They've got a very good reputation, and so this is nothing but a win-win for everyone.
Mr. Draymond.
Okay, well, I'd like to add my couple of cents here. First of all, I come to this from a very interesting background, because I'm the product of, on one hand, a father who was in retail and a mother who was a retired RN. So, and how that comes to play here is, I think this is, I want to agree with Mr. Quintero, I think this is a far better use of this building, because it leaves the retail component intact, to use as it should be used for retail, to continue to spin off foot traffic in our downtown area, not just from the students at the college, but also from those people visiting our city anyway, and we will develop, hopefully, some productive retail in that space. I like the fact that you are consolidated. Makes it sound like I'm happy you're in a dungeon or something. I don't mean that, but I'm happy that the non-retail space will see a productive use. Secondly, with regard to the on-street parking versus the parking structure, I'm extremely supportive of that as well, not just for the reasons mentioned by the students, but also because of what Mr. Milano was saying. Sometimes people forget or don't know, I don't know. I didn't move back to the Montrose area until 1990. Prior to that, I lived in South Glendale. And I know exactly what Mr. Milano is talking about, because that's what I did every single day. When I'd come home and spend the obligatory half hour circling the block and circling the block and circling the block and hoping to find a space to park somewhere remotely near my building. So I do understand that. To me, the answer is an underutilized parking garage, which is right there. Yes, it'll create a little bit of competition with some of the users of the gym and so on. But if they're typical of Ms. Kent, Nancy Kent, there's a competition they're willing to take on. So that's what I would like to see. And my mother was a surgical, not a technologist, but an operating room nurse. And so she retired to private practice, meaning when 7 of us kids came on the scene, eventually her duties were needed more keeping us whole and sound. And so in any case, I do support this. And I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Weaver.
Well, I have to admit, here's another one that I'm not very objective on. My daughter met her future husband in the driveway of Glendale Career College. They'd gone to school together 10 years before. He was coming out of Glendale Career College, where he attended, and ran into her in the driveway, and a year or two later they're married. And I'm a grandfather. But my son-in-law went there, graduate valedictorian in deep massage therapy, went on to Glendale College and Cal State LA, got his degree in kinesiology, is less than a year away from being a physician assistant through Western University. So as far as I'm concerned, Glendale Career College did a lot for him. Over the years, I've spoken at most of the graduations of Glendale Career College, except this year I didn't get invited. It's okay, I won't hold it against you. It's great. We need, with the demand for nurses and others in the medical field, with increased technology, it is important. So I do support it, but I do want to make sure the conditions that we had before are fulfilled, which is some way to monitor to make sure that your students are parking in the garage, not out on the streets. We've got enough out there now. And some agreement worked out with Dornplatz, because our hope was at that time the Dornplatz, and I think they eventually will, or their successors will, develop the site north of the Alex Theater, up including your building that you're proposing to move into. When that occurred, there was going to be enough adequate parking built in underground to take all the career college students in, plus all of the 24-hour fitness people, and get them all off the street. Now that will be absolutely necessary someday, whether that occurs in 2 years or 5 or 10. It's just, when I heard the word permanent, it's only permanent insofar as what Dornplatz agrees with you on, or what you agree with them on. And I think you said $45 a month you pay. What is the going rate now?
Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, in the Orange Street Garage, it's $45 a month for the pass. One thing that I would like some direction from you all is, would you like us to consider an in-lieu fee? It is a strategy that came out of the mobility plan. We're in the very early stages of it. We probably won't have that ready for you until I think that discussion comes back in late July. The range is somewhere between $600 a year per space, on the low end up to $20,000 or $24,000 on the high end. Now, we acknowledge that infill like this couldn't afford $24,000 per space per year, but there is a number that we've not had a chance to talk to Mr. First about, so that will be a news for him as well.
Well, I don't know how fast this is going to get approved anyhow. I know they want it rapidly, but I don't think we're sitting here today and finalizing it, are we?
No, you're not, but we would bring it back to you as soon as we could do whatever necessary environmental review is in the direction you give us.
And am I right, your current enrollment was somewhere around 85, according to what you have submitted to us. Current enrollment May 12th, 105 students, and you're willing to cap it at 150. That's what you're saying. And using in the morning, if you're using that 54 now, and you go up, it's still going to be less than 100 at the maximum usage, which would be in the morning. And we have a garage currently operating at half capacity, even at the peak hours. I know the car dealers are on the top floors, and 2 potential restaurants are coming. But I was told years ago we can't give any variances for parking in the Oyster Street garage because everything is coming. Well, I'm still waiting for it to all come down. Talk is cheap. So this is viable now, and I'm willing to address restaurants or anything else coming later. I'd still like to prod Durham Platts to move on developing that north side so we can get even more cars off the streets into the garage, or into their new garage. So there's variables down the future, but right now this is important to me. So I'm not objective. I think you got to get in there. So I'll go along with it, and I don't know how much you would get in a parking demand study when you're trying to look at potential restaurants that may come down in the future. I don't see the advantage in trying to discuss that right now.
I just want to say, I'm obviously interested in collecting the $45 a month from the individual student in a way to monitor that they are in fact parking in the garage, but that's all I need.
Sir.
I'm sorry to stick my hand up again, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add, since that issue was up, I'd like to know how it is you plan to monitor that, because I've been talking about this issue on a broader scale since years and years before coming to this council. And by the way, it's not just related to this particular, in this particular configuration, but we require parking for all kinds of businesses, off-street parking, and then we don't monitor at all in any way, shape, or form that they use it. We tell them you have to have it, but we can't compel them to use it. And we've even seen cases where businesses require to have X number of spaces as a parking lot. And then those landlords sublet their buildings and move their tenants off onto the street. So if you come up with a way to make sure that they use the parking we require them to have, I'd love to hear it.
Mr. Chair, that had been brought up with the Durham Platts, and there was supposed to be a way to monitor. That's what we were assured of. So let's I don't know how it worked. We had that discussion.
Well, and also I think the fact that the students will be paying the fees that no one wants to pay and then not use it.
Mr. Chairman, just to quickly answer, in this case, we have the computer of the garage in the arms. So as a student goes in, they'll swipe their card, they'll go into the garage and swipe their card to get out. We can generate a report from that and then compare that against the student population. So you are absolutely correct in most instances. In this case, we have the garage and the computer in the gate arms.
Mr. Isaki?
A couple of questions first. That building, how many parking spaces does it have? Real parking spaces?
The building has none itself. They're all public spaces.
The retail space that is going to go to Office Max?
That is one of the proposals that has been talked about.
How many parking spaces that retail would need?
Actually, under the code, it would not need any because it would go from
How many real parking spaces? I'm talking about real parking. I'm not saying about non-conforming park.
Assume 4 per thousand, and I think...
How many
it's
thousand square feet is that?
14,000? I think it's about 14,000 feet.
14,000.
So you're 50 to 60.
56 parking spaces, okay. So building doesn't have 56 parking spaces,
No,
but
it does
it is non-conforming, so
Correct.
it doesn't
Legal
have to provide that. Okay, so I understand that. Nevertheless, the cars are real and people are real, even though it's non-conforming. I really, to be honest with you, originally, as I saw the gentleman in the outside, we were talking about 50 spaces, and I didn't see much problem with it, and I told him that I think I would be more than happy to go for that. The staff report is talking about 135 spaces. Now, I understand their analysis is showing something different because the staff report is based on the square footage. Their analysis is based on the number of students they have, and maybe the way our code is written when we say classrooms, their classrooms is different than ours. We don't have just seats one after another sitting there. You're in a surgery room, you have tables and so on and so forth. So it actually have fewer people per square foot than if you had a regular instruction classrooms. So that probably explains why their numbers are lower. I do not need a study, and I'll tell you why, because in the past we did a study. So I know that study is clear in my mind. I know what that study said. I want to thank the staff for providing me with numbers for the number of vehicles at peak times. January 2008, 278. February 2008, 342. March of 2008, 316. April of 2008, 288. At a parking structure that has a capacity of 625. Now, saying all of that, I will say this. Parking structure was built for retail use. It was designed to basically help retailers in that area. Nevertheless, this is the reason I will go for this type of use is because the type of use. It is, in my mind, is an ancillary use to 3 hospitals that we have in here. It is a service that the school is providing that is highly needed, number one. Number two, I'm not worried about whether or not this schools are going to provide any secondary use to all of these merchants, because I was a student first. I got news for you. If you have only 20 minutes, you'll be lucky just to go to Porter's, get a sandwich, and run. And after you're done, you probably all work, so you're going to go to work. So nobody's going to be shopping anything in downtown Glendale, maybe after work. So I'm not walking that direction. So this is not one of those businesses that is going to generate secondary business. But it is a college that provides the needs that all the hospitals need, and there's a shortage. There's 2 things that I will go for. One, I would like to have the city staff work out the details with the schools as far as the roster of their students, maybe once a year or maybe once every 6 months, because they are saying currently they have 106 students and they are thinking about going up to 150. Depending on where they take their classes, that may change. If it's a 50-50 split, that's 75 spaces. They're saying just give us 68 spaces. So we need to know what that is. I think the number of spaces should be the number that is the largest at any given time. So if you have, let's say, 75 people in the morning, that's the number of parking spaces you would have to pay for. If it's more, then you have to pay more. I would like to see if there's a way we can control where they park in the parking structure, because retail people, they would like to park maybe the first, second level. Maybe we could ask them to talk to their people to park in the third, fourth level. There's an elevator, it comes down, so it's easy to access. Even for a handicapped student will be able to use the elevator. So this way you're still providing the retail establishment the parking, so they're not complaining, because we like to keep everybody happy, and that's the goal. Now, as far as in lieu fee is concerned, I'm hoping by the time you come back to us, you will have that number to us. I think this is something not the school should pay. I think that is something that the owner of the building should pay, because the owner of the building is taking a building that there is built-in obsolescence in it, and he's making profit out of it by us providing the parking that he needs. So that should come out of the building owner's side, not the school, but that's something that they need to work out. How would the staff work out the $45 fee? Would they pay in advance? How does that work? How did we work that out originally?
Last time, I think they were paying in advance, $45 in advance for the coming month.
Okay. So since I don't like to start all fresh, so we have done a lot of the groundwork last time, so I would like to kind of follow in that footprint. The only difference is I'm not going to ask for $1 million, because that was a different deal and this one's a different deal. The only thing that I am comfortable in doing is I would like to give the waiver for 3 years, and with option that we will have a second look at it 3 years from now. And so this way, as I don't know what's going to happen 3 years from now. There may be different changes, and if it's okay, we will renew it again. It's no different than what we do with variance cases or conditional use permits. We give them for a certain period of time, and then if everything's okay, then we just continue doing that. So that's where I feel comfortable. I don't think they're asking for 135 spaces, are they? What are they asking to actually pay?
Well, that was my question back to you. The code requires 135 spaces. I would suggest to you that they need 135 spaces. Their use is they only have 106 plus staff. So again, direction, I thought what I understood you say was they would have to pay something less than code required, but whatever their actual usage is.
Because part of the parking exception deals with the demand. What is the demand? What do they use? Code has certain requirements, and those are the minimum code requirements. This is a demand use, basically. When you only have 68 students in the morning for 4 hours, you need 68 spaces. In the evening, you have only 35 spaces. So in reality, those 68 are gone, and only 35 people are parking in those spaces. So it's not a cumulative of both. It just, because as we're talking about when we discussed the plan on, we talked about shared use in mobility study. So I'm trying to keep that in mind. You can't have 2 people in the same parking spaces at the same time. So if the maximum amount they're using is in the morning, then it's the number that it's going to be in the morning. So,
Mr. Chairman, Member Yusefian, one of the issues that we've encountered in several of these types of arrangements is how do you get the parking spaces, how do you get the parking passes from the people in the morning to the people in the afternoon? Plus, when you buy that pass, you could park there all day. And we'll know that through a report, and we don't think there'll be an abuse. But what I would suggest is, if you are going to do something less than 135, whatever the student enrollment is, you have them buy that many. So each student, as part of their tuition, buys a parking pass, and then they're in there for the month. That way, the morning student has his pass, and the afternoon student has their pass. They can park there just as any other person.
If you have 135 by code requirement, and they're going to have 150 students, how is that additional, how are you going to get those passes to those 15 people?
I would suggest that you have them buy additional passes. If you're going to peg it to a student population, whether it's 75 or 100 or 150, as a student enrolls, they buy a parking pass for the Orange Street Garage.
I want to see per student, per pass, per student, for each enrollee. It's easy to check their enrollment figures. And then, obviously, the staff also has to buy the passes, and that's it. Maybe some of the students will have those passes and will come back and shop, or will come back and invite friends to a restaurant or whatever. So per student, per person, and we're done with it. When that student graduates, then that's it.
Thank you.
I just want to say the motion is the direction to staff. So I don't know how we put that together. I'm not interested in the 3-year limitation or anything put on. I think I discussed that's between Dorn Platts and the Career College on terms of the lease and the conditions of the lease.
Lease, we could put a 3-year term on your parking exception. I would suggest
That is renewable.
Right, that comes back in 3 years. I would ask the business owner, Mr. First, if that coincides with their lease. I think it does.
Well,
You need to come.
We initially talked to Dorn Platts about a term in that neighborhood, yeah, about the 3-year deal. Although we, the will of the agency, but I just wanted to make a comment. Mr. Quintero said that's how it would effectively do it. The student doesn't have to actually buy the parking pass. Leave it. It's not an option for the students. Every student will be given one as part of their tuition. So that's where they'll have to park. And we'd be more than happy to direct them to park on the 3rd and 4th floor. There are other locations that we have where a parking structure is in the mix that has worked very, very well.
I'd also like to have the lease coincide with whatever private arrangement they have with with Dorn Platts. In other words, if they do 3 years with a 2-year option, or 3 and 5, whatever it is, so that it coincides with that particular business. That, to me, would make sense, too. If they've got a 3-year lease with a 2-year option, let's say, then we should have the same agreement with them on the parking.
Wait a minute. I'm going to ask a question, then we'll keep you up there. Mr. First, have you come to terms with Dorn Platts on the lease, all the lease terms?
We have, we drafted a lease. Our council has not reviewed it, but we got to that place. We were spending a lot of time actually working through that, and then we had to go down this road first before we spent a lot more time over there. But I mean, we've agreed on money, we've agreed on term, we've basically had a handshake, and we have a draft lease, but it has not been executed, but it will be shortly.
And the reason I ask you that is we've been here before.
Yeah.
Council has spent a lot of time on a very, as you know, as with Glendale Career College, a very valid and reputable institution, and we thought there was a deal, and we were working out all these details, and in the end it didn't pan out. So that's why I want to know how close you are, and I think you probably need more than a handshake with your landlord. I'm not going to say any more. Mr. Esefian.
If I can just add, agency member Nigerian, that isn't our impression of where we're at with them. We believe that we'll execute this lease. We have not heard anything from the contrary from Dorn Platts at this juncture, and we've had many conversations with them, many.
Let me just state my comments. Thanks, Mr. First. I don't have any other questions. I'm really not in favor of granting this parking exception. We were here a year and a half ago, and we set down very strict limitations as to how many spaces we were going to give Glendale Career College. So much so, in the fact we incorporated a poison pill of a $1 million deposit that we absolutely, positively did not want that parking garage to be used for more than 3 years. I think if anything, we've seen the downtown area become even more energized and more crowded, and there's more demand for parking. Granted, perhaps the garage isn't filled to the brim right now, but it was our intention looking forward that we wanted to leave that open for the retail. And it's not about the college. The college does great work. My dad was an orthopedic surgeon. My mother also was a surgical nurse, so I strongly appreciate the contribution that they make to the community. But, I mean, it's about a building that just has no parking, and the uses that are going in are sucking up everything in the neighborhood. 24-hour fitness. What's the parking exceptions that 24-hour fitness has?
Believe that they started before we had a parking code.
Well, let's
so
talk
they
about
would-
real spaces that they would have otherwise had to provide.
They're an assembly use that's 28.6 per thousand, and there's 10 to 15,000 square feet on the top. So it's
Just good at math.
280.
Several hundred.
280.
Several hundred spaces.
300, almost 300 spaces.
We're giving this, giving another 135, and if I'm reading the report correctly, that within that square footage, if the college grows, that there may be actually greater demand. Correct? It may grow to 150
It could be
students in a
150
few years,
students.
rendering a parking analysis based on their current smaller student population inaccurate. The Northwest College building, how many spaces do they have there?
I can't remember.
I mean, is there some sort of
Square
exception?
footage. About 6,500 square feet, so it's very similar to this.
Where are they parking?
They're parking in the Orange Street garage.
Okay, I mean, I don't really think I need to go on and on here. I just think it's not appropriate. We're giving Dorm Platts a heck of a benefit by being able to rent, and this is the same argument I made a year and a half ago. Council, I think, was supportive at that time. I think they were a little more concerned about the parking impact that was going to be made upon the Mid-Brand area. Dorm Platts is the one getting the true benefit here. We're giving them a parking garage for which they otherwise would not have been able to rent their spaces. And I want to be objective about it. I mean, I didn't meet my wife in the driveway of Glendale Career College, and I think
Too bad.
I think it's important that we all be objective. I mean, to come out and say that you're not objective about something right before you vote on it, I think certainly leads to question your role as a councilman making a decision.
Oh, come on, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Weaver, you
Go
can't
there.
say I'm not objective. That's the first thing you said. I'm not objective
I'm not
about
objective
this.
from the standpoint my son-in-law went there. Where does that make me not objective on a vote?
You said you weren't objective. Those were not my
Now
words.
you're taking two ways. I'm going to vote for it because my son-in-law went there? I don't think so, Mr. Chair. You're bending it way out.
Those are the excuses, or the reasons you just gave us, Mr. Weaver. I mean, I'm not
Come
making
on,
that up.
I said enough. Don't go there with me.
Mr. Weaver, may I just
Hey,
recommend...
be an attorney and sit there and play the game.
You're interrupting me, Mr. Weaver. Let me just recommend that to all my colleagues, whether it's an agency meeting or a council meeting, don't preface your remarks by saying, I'm really not objective about this, because it certainly gives the impression that you're not objective about it. I think what the public needs is an
Oh, fine.
objective evaluation. I'm not done,
Now
Mr.
on, I
Weaver.
won't do that anymore. I'll hide
Weaver?
my true feelings.
Mr. Weaver, please let me finish. I think it certainly gives the impression that council is not acting objectively, and I think that's the very least that the public needs to hear. Whether it's said in jest or tongue-in-cheek, it's still, I think, inappropriate. In any event, I would, counting the votes, I would support the recommendation by Mr. Yusefian to review the impacts that this parking exception is going to have at the end of the 3-year period. I think just to give a blanket exception for parking on a lease that may be extended ad infinitum would be a grave mistake for us acting as an agency by dedicating parking resources. Mr. Yusefian.
I'd like to explain to you why that 3-year was put in there originally. The purpose for the 3-year term was for Dorn Platts to build a new facility on San Fernando Road that is going to allow then the career college to move into, which will, at that point, allow the career college to move there and allow Doran Platts to basically tear down that building that has absolutely no parking. And in reality, it's sucking up almost 500 to 600 real cars parking and upgrade that area. That was the thought process. That building needs to be torn down. Its economic use is gone. It needs to revitalize that area. That was the whole concept behind what we did in the past. We gave him 3-year period, assuming that in that 3-year period, that project will be approved and built, and Career College would move there. That's the problem that I'm having, because your issue at this point is not that. You're not talking about moving to a new facility. You're going to be here. And if any of us would like to see any kind of improvement to north of Alex Theater, we can probably kiss that goodbye for a long time, because why would a property owner tear down their building that currently doesn't have a single parking spaces, while they can lease it out to uses that one uses requires 280 parking spaces, another 135 parking spaces, another 165 parking spaces. To build those parking spaces just on surface is $15,000 each. To build them subterranean is about $30,000 each. So you take that $30,000 and you multiply it to the 500 parking spaces, that's a $15 million that he's not going to have to put in. So why should he do that? An idiot would sell that building or tear that building down. That's simple math. I'm not, I know how this works. So, but we did not want to inconvenience the career college. We did not want to inconvenience the students. It's not their fault, So the place was sold and they had to leave. I'm still willing to go there on a temporary basis. I don't have a problem with temporary basis, because my logic last time was we allow auto dealers on temporary basis to park there because they're remodeling their place, and then when they're finished, they move. And this was going to be the same thing. And so I don't have a problem. You want to have a 3-year lease and do there for 3 years, and later on you work out a deal with some other location and go there, I don't have a problem with that. I will tell you one thing. We had a former city council and an attorney in this city, good friends of the Doran Platts, work with them with the career college. And after a year of negotiating, they got butkins. Nothing. They dragged this city council through several meetings, very, very hot debates, and in the end of the day, they just disappeared. So, as far as I'm concerned, unless I see a signed lease, I don't want to even talk about it. Because as far as I know, you ain't got nothing. Nothing. Hate to tell you this, you don't. Good luck. When you get it, then we'll talk.
Mr. Howard.
Mr. Chair, this is good direction and information, I think, both to what I'll call the proposed applicant and to staff. This matter is here to provide direction on whether we should move forward with the processing of a parking exception and the necessary CEQA document that will go along with that. Much of this discussion is, as I pointed out before, good direction, but it's somewhat academic, because we still need to come back to you with a formal hearing on a parking exception, where you can debate these issues in even greater detail, and some of the details as well, along with the necessary CEQA document and the analysis required by law. I can't tell you, as I sit here right now, how in-depth that analysis may be. We may be able to use the original mitigated negative declaration along with some subsequent information to supplement that, or we may need an entirely new one, depending upon how the initial study comes out. That will have to be done.
You've got enough direction?
I'm prepared to give you some language in a motion.
You've got more than you needed, probably.
And right now, the motion at 6A has a fill-in line, which if the agency would agree, You could add the language to move forward with processing of a request for a parking exception, including any required sequel analysis. I have some language about the possibility of an in lieu parking fee as well. If that's something that the agency is, you have.
I think we're willing to at least look at that.
Details.
So I might add, we can bring back those options when we bring back the exception. I mean, it's clear there's a willingness for an exception. There's some questions to the conditions to be attached. We can bring all those back, so when you hear the matter and make a decision after the appropriate sequel, you can attach whatever conditions you
So
want.
can we make the motion 6A1
We're going to wrap
with?
this up.
My question from both the city attorney and also city manager is, when you come back, is it required by code that they have a lease in hand?
It is not. If you recall, last time we made the parking exceptions specifically conditioned on a negotiated lease, and ultimately when it fell apart, we came back to you with essentially a formal motion to revoke.
So same condition could be also?
We could do it virtually the same way. Again, if you would like to see a signed lease, strong suggestion, I think you've heard from the applicant has heard a strong suggestion that they'd like to see a signed lease. But if they don't, that doesn't preclude you from granting a parking exception subject to or contingent on execution of a lease.
I was going to point out, if they're as close as they say they are, this is going to be at least 2 or 3 weeks before it's back to you, probably longer. There would be an expectation. I think they should have a signed lease by that time, or there's trouble in River City.
Okay, Mr. Quintero.
Okay, well, I will move 6A1.
With the comments that staff has or
Mr.
whatever.
Howard made.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Agency members Draymond.
Yes.
Quintero.
Yes.
Weaver.
Aye.
Yusefian.
Aye.
Chairman Najarian.
No. That's our last item, I believe, except for agency member comments. Any comments?
Yes.
Mr. Raymond.
I have a question about Mr. Lanzafame. I'd like to know, since we're in redevelopment, where we are with the property on San Fernando Road, the Target property.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, Member Draymond, we have had some preliminary talks with the Target folks and the developer that they have selected. We represented to them the zoning and what currently could be had by right there. They are putting together their proposal now. It may be that they're asking for variances to include some housing in an appropriate manner as it abuts a residential neighborhood. We are talking to them about other benefits that they might bring through the project, bring to the community, such as open space or affordable housing. We've asked that they meet with our urban designer, and I think a meeting is set up for later this week.
All right. Is it possible, Mr. Chair, that we could continue to be updated on this as in the areas that we can be updated, that is, this moves along? No, that was it.
Okay. Any other comments? Move to adjourn?
Second.
We are adjourned.